As I walked into the diner for lunch, I heard a familiar laugh coming from the corner booth. My son was telling his wife how he had tricked me with the $200,000 loan. I calmly approached them, and my son was left speechless. A single word from me made him collapse. But to understand how I got to that moment, how a 68-year-old mother ended up destroying her own son with 3 words, I need to tell you everything from the beginning. It all started 6 months earlier, on an ordinary afternoon in April. I was in my house, the same house where I had lived for 30 years with my husband before he died, sewing a wine-colored dress for a client. My hands weren't what they used to be. The arthritis bothered me more and more, but I kept sewing because it was the only thing I knew how to do. It was my life, my identity. I was the neighborhood seamstress. Matthew arrived that afternoon with a huge smile. "Mom, I have wonderful news," he said, hugging me. He smelled of that expensive cologne he always wore, the one I bought him every Christmas even though it cost half my Social Security check. "They're promoting me at work. Samantha and I are thinking about buying a bigger house. Everything is perfect," I filled with pride. My son, successful, happy, with a good marriage. It was everything a mother could wish for after raising him alone for so many years. After his father died of a heart attack when Matthew was just 15, I worked double shifts, sewed until my fingers bled, and skipped meals so he could go to a good college. It was worth it, or so I thought. "I need your help with something, Mom," he said, sitting next to me. "I'm processing some paperwork to improve your Social Security benefits. You know I always worry about you. I want you to have a more comfortable old age." My heart melted. What a thoughtful son, I thought. How lucky I was to have a son who cared about his elderly mother. "I just need you to sign some documents at the bank," he continued. "They're pure formalities, government stuff. You know how the bureaucracy is. I'll go with you so you don't have to worry about anything." I agreed without thinking. Why would I mistrust him? He was my son, my blood, the person I trusted most in this world. We went to the bank 3 times in 2 weeks. Each time, Matthew brought me papers to sign. Fine print, terms I didn't understand, numbers that confused me. "Don't worry, Mom. I already checked everything. Just put your signature here, here, and here." And I signed, again and again. I signed with that blind trust of a mother who believes her son would never harm her. Leah, the bank teller, looked at me with a strange expression every time I went. Now I understand why. She knew. She saw the documents. She knew what my son was doing. But she said nothing. Or maybe she tried to tell me something, and I was so blinded by my trust that I didn't listen. The weeks passed. Matthew came to visit me less. When he did, he was always in a hurry. "I have a lot of work, Mom. The promotion has me really busy." I understood. Or pretended to understand. Because deep down, very deep down, I had started to feel something strange. Something I couldn't explain. An uneasiness that woke me up at 3 in the morning and wouldn't let me go back to sleep. One time I asked him, "Son, are those papers I signed at the bank ready yet? When will my benefits improve?" He looked at me impatiently. "These things take time, Mom. Don't be impatient. I'll let you know when everything is ready." His tone was dry, sharp. It wasn't the loving voice I was used to, but I convinced myself he was stressed from work. Samantha changed too. She used to come over for coffee on Thursdays. We would talk about everything, we would laugh. She was like the daughter I never had. But suddenly she stopped coming. She stopped answering my calls. When I finally saw her at a family gathering, she barely spoke to me. She was distant, cold, avoiding my gaze. I wondered what I had done wrong. My life went on in a simple routine. I got up early, had breakfast alone in my big, empty kitchen, sewed for hours, watched a little TV at night, and fell asleep wondering why my son didn't call me like he used to. Tuesdays were my favorite days. I would go out to lunch alone at a small diner downtown. It was nothing fancy, but the food was good, and I liked watching people pass by. That Tuesday in October, the Tuesday that would change everything, I got ready as usual. I put on my cream-colored dress, the one that made me feel presentable. I combed my hair carefully, took my purse, and left the house. The diner was a 20-minute walk. I liked walking. It kept me active, made me feel like I was still useful. that I could still take care of myself. I arrived at the diner at 12:30, lunchtime. It was quite crowded. I pushed open the glass door and went inside. The air conditioning hit my face. The murmur of conversations enveloped me. And then I heard it. That laugh. Matthew's laugh. It was coming from the corner booth, at the back of the diner. My heart leaped with joy. My son was here. What a wonderful coincidence. We could have lunch together. But then I heard the words that shattered my world in a second. She won't understand a thing. Mom's already too old. I took out the loan in her name and she didn't even realize it. I froze at the entrance of the diner. My legs stopped responding. My purse slipped from my shoulder, and I had to grab it before it hit the floor. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process what I had just heard. $200,000. A loan. In my name. Without me knowing. Samantha let out a laugh. A cheerful, carefree laugh, as if they were talking about something trivial. And what if she finds out? Honey, what are you going to do? Her voice sounded playful, complicit. There wasn't a hint of real worry in her words. It was a rhetorical question. She already knew the answer. Matthew responded with a confidence that cut through me like a rusty knife. She won't find out. She trusts me like an idiot. She always has. She signed everything without even reading. It was easier than I thought. He laughed. My son laughed at me. At my trust. At my love. At my stupidity. I felt a physical pain in my chest, as if someone was squeezing my heart with their hands. A cold sweat ran down my back. The diner lights became too bright, the sounds too loud. Everything was spinning around me. I thought I was going to faint right there, at the entrance, in front of all those people eating peacefully, unaware that my life had just exploded into 1,000 pieces. I leaned against the wall. I needed something solid to hold me up because my legs couldn't do it anymore. I closed my eyes for a second. Just a second. I tried to convince myself that I had heard wrong, that my imagination was playing tricks on me, that my son, my Matthew, would never be capable of something like this. But when I opened my eyes and looked at that corner booth, reality hit me with full force. There he was, Matthew, my son, with his perfectly pressed white shirt, his expensive watch gleaming on his wrist, his hair combed back with that gel he always used. He looked successful, prosperous, happy, and it was all a lie. It was all a mask built on my pain. Samantha raised her glass of wine. The dark red liquid swirled in the glass as she made a toast. To our future restaurant, my love. Your mom is doing us a huge favor without even knowing it. How generous of her. The irony in her voice burned me. They were mocking me. Both of them. Together. Complicit. Matthew clinked his glass against hers. To our dreams, honey. We're finally going to have that place we always wanted. I already found the perfect spot in the prime tourist spot. With $200,000, it's enough for everything. Remodeling, equipment, licenses, everything. My mind started working through the fog of shock. $200,000. A loan in my name. The visits to the bank. The papers I signed without reading. It all started to fit together like a gruesome puzzle, every piece falling into place, revealing a horrible picture I had refused to see. The 3 times we went to the bank. The documents with the fine print. Leah, the teller, looking at me with that expression that I now understood was pity. Matthew rushing me. Sign here, Mom. And here. And here. It's just formalities. I signed like a fool. Like an idiot. Just like he had said. Samantha took a sip of wine and asked, And the payments? That's a lot of money, Matthew. How are you going to pay them? There was genuine concern in her voice now. Not for me, of course. For them, for their plan, for their future built on my ruins. My son shrugged with a carelessness that chilled me to the bone. The payments will arrive at her house. It's like $3,000 a month. Obviously, she won't be able to pay them with her miserable Social Security check. After 3 or 4 missed payments, the bank will start the foreclosure process. Foreclosure. Samantha's eyes widened with feigned alarm. They're going to take her house. Exactly. Matthew speared a piece of meat with his fork and brought it to his mouth, chewing calmly while planning my destruction. The house is in her name. It's the only valuable thing she has. The bank will take it to recover the loan, and we'll already have the restaurant up and running by then. And where will your mom live? Samantha's question sounded curious, not worried, like someone asking what will happen to an old piece of furniture you need to get rid of. Matthew wiped his mouth with his napkin. I don't know. There are state-run homes. Or she can go live with some distant cousin. It's not my problem, honey. She already lived her life. Now it's our turn to live ours. He took another sip of his drink. Besides, that house is too big for her alone. She just stays there, cooped up, sewing like a sad old woman. I'm doing her a favor. A favor. He was doing me a favor by leaving me homeless. By robbing me of everything I had. By turning me into a destitute 68-year-old. That was a favor to him. Tears began to roll down my cheeks uncontrollably. Hot, bitter, silent. But I made no sound. I didn't scream. I didn't whimper. I just let them fall as my heart broke into smaller and smaller pieces. Samantha laughed again. You're terrible, Matthew. But you're right. We can't stay stuck because of old people. My mom is the same way. Always complaining. Always needing attention. Sometimes you just have to be practical. Practical. That was the word they used to justify cruelty. Exactly, my son replied. And the best part is, she'll never suspect it was me. She'll think it was a bank error or an internet scam or something. She'll never imagine her precious little boy tricked her. In her mind, I'm too perfect to do anything wrong. The mockery in his voice split me in two. He was right. I never would have suspected. Not in a million years. If I hadn't walked into that diner at that exact moment, if I hadn't heard them, I would have remained blind until the first loan payment notice arrived at my house. And even then, I probably would have called Matthew to ask for help. And he would have come, with his fake, worried face, telling me it was a bank error, that he would fix it, all while sinking me deeper and deeper into his trap. Something broke inside me at that moment. It wasn't my heart. That was already shattered. It was something deeper. It was the image I had of myself. The good Eleanor, the trusting Eleanor, the Eleanor who believed in the unconditional love between a mother and son. That woman died right there, leaning against the wall of a diner, listening to her son plan her ruin while eating a steak that probably cost what I earned in a week of sewing. But from those ashes, another Eleanor was born. One with her eyes wide open. One with rage in her veins instead of blood. One who was no longer going to be a victim. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with that cold, air-conditioned air. And I made a decision. I reached into my purse, fumbling for my cell phone. My clumsy fingers, deformed by years of arthritis and hard work, were shaking so much I could barely grip it. But I managed. I pulled the phone from my purse with trembling hands. The screen lit up, and for a moment, I stared at it, not knowing what to do. I had never been good with technology. Matthew always made fun of me for it. "Mom, you're a disaster with your phone," he'd say, laughing. Now, the very technology he thought I couldn't master was going to be his downfall. I looked for the voice recorder app. My grandniece, my cousin Sarah's daughter, had shown me how to use it a few months ago. "Grandma Eleanor, look, you just tap this red button and it's recording. It's easy." At the time, I didn't understand why I would ever need to record anything. Now I knew. I tapped the red button. A small timer started running on the screen. It was recording. I subtly raised the phone, aiming it toward the corner booth where my son and his wife continued to enjoy their lunch, oblivious to my presence. They were close enough, about 30 feet away. Their voices came through clear, crisp, and damning. Matthew cut another piece of steak and, while chewing, continued talking. The bank deposited the money into an account I opened 2 months ago. An account in my name, obviously. Mom has no access to it. I already transferred $50,000 for the deposit on the new space. The owner is waiting for me to sign the contract tomorrow. My breathing became erratic. $50,000. He had already spent $50,000 of that stolen money. Of my money. Because even though I hadn't authorized it, even though I knew nothing, that loan was in my name. I was responsible. I was the one who would have to pay it. I was the one who would lose everything. Samantha clapped softly, her hands making a dry sound that grated on my nerves. "I'm so proud of you, honey. I always knew you were smart, but this is beyond my expectations. And the restaurant permits. They're already in process," Matthew replied with that proud voice I knew so well. The same voice he used to tell me about his achievements as a child. When he won an award at school, when he got his first job, when he got married, I had always been so proud of him, and now that pride had turned to ash in my mouth. "I calculated everything perfectly," my son continued. "In 6 months, the restaurant will be up and running. In a year, we'll be making enough to live well. And Mom will be in some cheap nursing home, trying to figure out what happened to her house." He laughed. That laugh drilled into my ears. "The best part is that legally, I didn't do anything wrong. She signed everything. Her signature is on every document. If anyone asks, I just helped her with the paperwork because she doesn't understand these things." Samantha looked at him with admiration. With that nauseating admiration of someone looking at a person who just did something brilliant. "You're a genius, Matthew. A genius. Your mom should be proud to have raised you to be so smart." The two of them laughed again. That laugh, which no longer sounded human to me, sounded like the shrieking of animals celebrating over a dead carcass. I kept recording. Every word, every laugh, every detail of their macabre plan was being registered on that small device I held with hands that weren't shaking as much anymore. The rage was replacing the fear. The determination was replacing the shock. I was not going to be their victim. I was not going to let myself be destroyed like this. "What if she goes to the police?" Samantha asked suddenly. My heart hammered. For a second, I thought they had seen me. But no. She was just being cautious, covering all the possibilities. Matthew shook his head, completely relaxed. "She won't go to the police. First, because she won't suspect me. Second, because even if she does, she would never report me. I'm her only son. She loves me too much. She'd rather lose everything than see me in trouble." He took a sip of his drink. "I know her better than anyone. She's weak. She always has been. That's why it was so easy to manipulate her. Weak. He called me weak. Me, who had worked until my hands were raw to give him everything. Me, who had gone without food many times so he would have lunch for school. Me, who had sewn dresses day and night to pay for his college. Weak. That word echoed in my head like a broken bell. "Besides," Matthew added, wiping his mouth with his napkin, "she's old. She's 68. How much time does she have left? 10 years? 15 if she's lucky? She's not going to spend those years fighting me. She'll accept what happened and move on. She's always been like that. Submissive. Obedient. The perfect mother who never questions anything." Samantha sighed with satisfaction. "I wish my family was as easy to handle as yours. My brother won't leave me alone, always asking to borrow money. Your mom, on the other hand, is a sweetheart. Never asks for anything, never bothers anyone, always there when you need her." The irony of her words made me clench my teeth. Always there when you need her. Yes, always there to be robbed, deceived, used. "That's why I chose her for this," Matthew said with a coldness that froze me. "I knew she was the perfect target. She trusted me blindly. She had a house with no mortgage that could serve as collateral. She understands nothing about finances or banks. She was the ideal victim. Ideal victim. That's how my son saw me. Not as his mother, not as the woman who gave him life. As an ideal victim." The waiter approached their table. "Would you like to order dessert?" he asked with the polite voice of someone doing their job, unaware he was serving two monsters. Matthew nodded. "Yes, bring us the chocolate cake to share. And 2 coffees. The waiter jotted it down and walked away. Everything so normal, everything so mundane. While my world was falling apart, they were ordering dessert. I looked at the timer on my phone. I had been recording for 8 minutes. 8 minutes of a full confession. 8 minutes of irrefutable evidence. 8 minutes that were going to change everything. But I couldn't stop there. I needed more. I needed every detail, every word, every possible piece of proof. Samantha leaned forward, lowering her voice slightly, though not enough that I couldn't hear. "And what are you going to do when she starts getting the letters from the bank? The payment notifications, the default notices, all that. She's going to panic. Matthew shrugged indifferently. Let her panic. By the time she understands what happened, we'll already have the restaurant running and the money moving. She won't be able to do anything. The loan is in her name. The signatures are hers. Even if she proves I helped her with the paperwork, it's not illegal to help your mother with bank forms. You're evil, Samantha said, but it wasn't a reprimand. It was a compliment. She said it with a smile, with admiration, like someone telling their partner they are handsome or smart, evil, and she loved him for it. They were both the same. Two snakes coiled around each other. The waiter returned with the cake and coffees. He placed everything on the table carefully. Matthew thanked him without really looking at him. People like my son never really see the people who serve them, just like he never really saw me. He only saw what he could get, what he could use, what he could steal. Samantha picked up her fork and cut a piece of the cake. Samantha savored the cake with her eyes closed, as if it were the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. This is incredible, she murmured. When we have our restaurant, we have to hire a pastry chef this good. Our restaurant. My money, my destruction turned into their dream. Matthew nodded as he drank his coffee. I already have it all planned. The menu, the decor, even the name. We're going to call it Samantha's. As a tribute to you, honey. She clapped excitedly, her eyes sparkling like a child's on Christmas. A restaurant built on the ruins of my life, bearing the name of the woman who helped destroy me. The irony was so cruel it almost made me laugh. And the employees? Samantha asked. We need people we can trust. We can't just hire anyone. I already spoke to Leo, my friend from work. He has restaurant experience and is looking for a change. I offered him the manager position. I also contacted Rachel. Remember her? The one who studied culinary arts. She's willing to be our head chef. Matthew spoke with such enthusiasm, he sounded like a legitimate businessman discussing an honest deal, not a thief planning how to spend money stolen from his mother. I kept recording, even though every word hurt like a stab wound. My phone had been recording for 12 minutes. 12 minutes documenting the greatest betrayal of my life. But I needed more. I needed to hear everything. I needed to fully understand the magnitude of what they had done to me. I'm worried about one thing, Samantha said suddenly, setting her fork down on the plate. Her face showed a wrinkle of concern between her eyebrows. What if your mom really can't pay and the bank sues her? What if we end up involved in a legal process? Matthew shook his head, completely calm. We won't be involved in anything. The loan is hers. The debts are hers. We don't exist on any paper. I was just the one who accompanied her to the bank. Nothing more. If anyone asks, I'll say she wanted the money to remodel her house or for a trip. Any excuse. There's no way to connect us to this. But the money? If they investigate, they'll see you received $200,000 from nowhere. Samantha's voice sounded anxious now. For the first time, she seemed to understand they might have crossed a dangerous line. The money went into a different account, honey. An account I opened saying it was for an investment project. I have all the fake documents ready. If anyone asks, that money came from a personal loan I took out. It has nothing to do with Mom. Matthew smiled with the arrogant confidence of someone who thinks they've thought of everything. I was very careful. There's no way this will splash back on us. Samantha breathed a sigh of relief and took another bite of cake. You're incredible. Really. Sometimes it scares me how smart you are. She said it as a compliment, but there was something else in her voice, a hint of fear, as if she had just realized that if her husband was capable of doing this to his own mother, what would stop him from doing the same to her one day? I have to be, Matthew replied. I grew up poor, remember? Living in that small house, watching Mom sew until 2 a.m. to pay the bills. Watching us lack everything while others had more than enough. I promised myself that when I grew up, I would have everything they had, and now I'm going to have it, no matter how. Those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. He remembered those nights. Those nights when I sewed until my eyes couldn't stay open, until my fingers bled, until my back screamed in pain. He remembered them, and instead of gratitude, he had developed resentment. Instead of love, he had cultivated ambition. I had worked myself to the bone to give him a better life, and he hated me for having been poor. "We weren't that poor," Samantha said, trying to console him. "You had an education, food, a roof over your head. Some people have less." "But it wasn't enough," Matthew growled bitterly. "It was never enough. While my classmates had brand-name clothes, I wore clothes Mom sewed. While they went on vacation to the beach, I stayed home helping her with her sewing. While they had the latest technology, I had to wait years for a used cell phone." His voice was full of contained rage. "I was ashamed of my life. I was ashamed of her." The tears rolled down my cheeks again, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of shock or pain. They were tears of understanding. I finally understood. My son hadn't betrayed me out of need. He had betrayed me out of resentment, out of shame, out of that silent hatred that had been growing in him for years, while I thought we were fine, while I thought he loved me. "But now everything is going to change," Matthew continued, his voice regaining that enthusiastic tone. "We're going to have the most successful restaurant in the city. We're going to have money to spare. We're going to live in a big house. We're going to travel. We're going to have everything we always should have had. And no one, especially not my mother, is going to take it from me." Samantha raised her coffee cup. "To us, to our future, to doing whatever it takes to get what we deserve." Matthew clinked his cup against hers. The sound of the ceramic rang like a funeral bell in my ears. They were toasting my ruin as if it were something to celebrate. "When do you think the first loan payment notice will arrive at her house?" Samantha asked. "In about 2 weeks," Matthew replied, checking his watch, that expensive watch I had given him for his last birthday. "The bank sends the first notice 30 days after the loan is approved. It's been 2 weeks since we took the money out, so in 2 more weeks, she'll get the first notice." "And what if she calls you?" "Scared. Obviously she'll call me. And I'll act surprised." "How strange, Mom. Let me investigate what happened. I'll tell her it was probably a bank error, not to worry, that I'll fix it. I'll calm her down, like always." Matthew smiled maliciously. "By the time she realizes it wasn't an error, it will be too late." "You're so bad," Samantha laughed. "But I love it. Always so calculating, so cold. That's why I married you." The waiter returned with the check. Matthew pulled out his wallet, that genuine leather wallet I had also given him, and placed a card on the table. "This pays for our future, honey," he told Samantha with a smile. When the waiter took the card, I recognized the design. It was my card, my credit card, the one I had lent him for an emergency a month ago, and he never returned. They weren't even paying for that lunch with their money. They were paying for it with mine. I stopped the recording. 16 minutes. 16 minutes of a full confession. 16 minutes of irrefutable evidence of fraud, theft, and conspiracy. I put the phone back in my purse with hands that no longer trembled. The rage had burned away all the fear. The determination had replaced the pain. I was no longer the weak Eleanor they thought they knew. I dried my tears with a tissue from my purse. I fixed my hair. I took 3 deep breaths, filling my lungs with air, preparing myself for what was coming. They were still at their table, oblivious to my presence, oblivious that their perfect world was about to collapse. I walked toward their table with slow, firm steps. Each step echoed in my ears like a war drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. The distance between the entrance and that corner booth seemed infinite, as if I were walking through a thick, dark dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was the most brutal reality I had faced in my 68 years of life. The people at the nearby tables kept eating, talking, laughing. No one noticed the drama that was about to unfold. No one saw the old woman walking toward her son with a shattered heart and hands full of evidence. For them, it was just another Tuesday at any old diner. 5 steps, 6 steps, 7 steps. I was close enough to see the details. Matthew's plate, almost empty, with just a few crumbs of cake left. Samantha's wine glass with a trace of red lipstick on the rim. The check on the table, paid for with my stolen credit card. Everything so normal. Everything so obscene. Matthew was saying something to Samantha in a low voice. She was laughing, covering her mouth with her hand, like women do when they want to seem demure but aren't. Neither of them looked toward the entrance. Neither of them expected to see me. Why would they? I was predictable. I was controllable. I would never surprise him. 8 steps, 9 steps, 10 steps. I reached their table and stood right beside it, in silence. For a moment, neither of them saw me. They were still in their bubble of complicity and evil plans. But then Samantha looked up, probably to call the waiter, and her eyes met mine. I saw her turn pale. Her mouth fell open slightly, forming a small O of surprise. Her hand, holding her napkin, froze in midair. "Matthew," she whispered, but no sound came from her throat. She just moved her lips. My son followed her gaze, and when he saw me, his face changed completely. The color drained from his cheeks as if someone had turned on a tap and let out all his blood. His eyes, which moments before had been shining with malice and satisfaction, were now wide as plates, filled with pure panic. The fork he was holding fell onto his plate with a metallic clatter that echoed in the sudden silence that enveloped us. "Mom." His voice came out strangled, barely a whisper. "What? What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I let the silence stretch, heavy, suffocating. I let the fear grow in their eyes. I let him understand, slowly, that his world had just changed forever. The nearby tables started to notice the tension. Conversations died down. People turned to look at us with curiosity. I took my phone out of my purse with deliberately slow movements. Matthew followed the movement with his eyes, like an animal mesmerized by a snake. Samantha had stopped breathing. I could see her chest was still, frozen in that moment of terrible understanding. I held the phone up in front of my son's eyes. The screen showed the recorder app. The timer read 16 minutes and 42 seconds. Matthew looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. I saw the exact moment he understood, the moment reality hit him like a sledgehammer. I recorded everything. 3 words. Just 3 words. But they were enough to destroy his entire world, to wipe away that arrogant smile, to end his plans, to show him that his weak old mother was not as stupid as he thought. The silence that followed was absolute. The entire diner seemed to have ceased to exist. There was no sound of cutlery, no conversations, no background music. Only the 3 of us existed in that moment, frozen in time. Matthew and I looked into each other's eyes, him with terror, me with a coldness I didn't even know I possessed. "Mom, I can explain." His voice was trembling now. His hands were trembling. His whole body was trembling. The confident man who was talking about leaving me homeless 5 minutes ago had disappeared. In his place was a scared child who had just been caught doing something terrible. "You don't need to explain anything," I said, with a voice I didn't recognize as my own. It was too calm, too cold, too controlled. I heard everything. Every word, every laugh, every detail of how you planned to destroy me. I placed the phone on the table, between his empty plate and Samantha's wine glass. 16 minutes of confession. 16 minutes where you admit to fraud, falsifying documents, theft, where you describe exactly how you tricked me into signing for a $200,000 loan that you were going to use. Samantha made a choked sound, her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of fear. Fear of the consequences. Fear of losing everything they had planned. There wasn't a hint of guilt on her face. Just terror at being discovered. "Mom, please." Matthew reached his hand out to me, but I pulled away before he could touch me. I didn't want his touch. I didn't want anything from him. Let me explain. It's not what it looks like. I was going to pay you back. I was going to. To let them foreclose on my house? My voice rose. The people at the nearby tables were watching us openly now. To send me to a state-run home? To laugh at me while I tried to figure out what happened? I heard you, Matthew. I heard every word. Don't try to lie to me now. He closed his mouth. He had no answer. What could he say? I had trapped him completely. There was no possible excuse. There was no way to deny what he had done when it was all recorded on my phone. "You said I was weak," I continued, and my voice broke slightly on that word, "that I was easy to manipulate, that I trusted you like an idiot. You were right. I was an idiot for raising you alone after your father died, An idiot for working until my hands were raw so you could have an education. An idiot for giving you everything I had and more. An idiot for loving you unconditionally. The tears started to fall from my eyes again, but I didn't wipe them away. I let him see them. I let him see the pain he had caused me. You said you were ashamed of me, that you were ashamed I sewed your clothes, that you were ashamed of our poverty. My voice was shaking now. Do you know what I'm ashamed of, Matthew? Of having raised you, of having created a monster so selfish, so cruel, so heartless that he's capable of stealing from his own mother and laughing while he plans to leave her on the street. I wasn't going to leave you on the street, he whispered, but even now, trapped, he was still lying. I was going to. Shut up. My shout echoed through the diner. Several people jumped in their seats. The waiter who was walking toward us stopped dead. I don't want to hear any more lies. I've heard enough. I heard how you planned to use my house as collateral. How you were going to let the bank take it from me. How you didn't care where I ended up. It's all recorded, Matthew. Every lie, every plan, everything. I took my phone from the table and put it back in my purse. I'm going to the police. I'm going to the bank. I'm taking this recording everywhere it needs to go. And I'm going to make sure you pay for what you did to me. My voice was firm now, no trembling, no doubt. You thought I was too old, too stupid, too weak to defend myself. You were wrong. Matthew stood up so abruptly that his chair fell backward with a crash. You can't do that. I'm your son. His voice was desperate, high-pitched, almost hysterical. You can't report me. Think about what this will do to our family. Our family? I let out a bitter laugh that surprised even me. You destroyed our family the moment you decided to steal from me. The moment you sat at this table and laughed at me. There is no family anymore, Matthew. There's just a thief and his victim. Samantha finally found her voice. Eleanor, please, you have to understand. We needed that money. Matthew has debts. The bank was going to foreclose on our apartment. We had no other choice. Her words came out in a rush, desperate, searching for any shred of compassion in me. Debts? I looked at her in disbelief. Are you telling me that besides robbing me to open your restaurant, you also have debts you didn't tell me about? And you think that makes what you did okay? We were going to pay you back, Matthew shouted, drawing more stares. The diner manager was starting to walk toward us. As soon as the restaurant was running, we were going to pay off the loan. You wouldn't have lost anything. A lie. My voice cut through the air like a knife. I heard you say the exact opposite. You said you were going to let them foreclose on the house, that you'd send me to a nursing home, that I had already lived my life. Don't make up stories now, Matthew. It's too late for that. The manager reached our table. Excuse me, is there a problem? You're disturbing the other customers. There's no problem, I said, turning to him calmly. I'm leaving. But you might want to know that these two just confessed to $200,000 in fraud while eating in your establishment. I have it all recorded. I showed him my phone briefly. The police will probably want to talk to you later to verify they were here. The manager's eyes widened in surprise. He looked at Matthew and Samantha, then at me. I'll call security if necessary. That won't be necessary, I replied. They're staying. I'm leaving. But we'll be seeing each other again very soon, in court. I looked at my son one last time. This man who was once my baby, my boy, my pride. Now I only saw a stranger, a criminal, someone who had killed my son with his own actions. Mom, please don't do this, Matthew pleaded. Tears were streaming down his face now, but they didn't move me. They were tears of self-pity, not remorse. Think about everything we've been through together, about everything I mean to you. You can't destroy my life like this. You destroyed mine first, I said simply. Now you're going to face the consequences. I turned to leave, but before taking a step, I looked back over my shoulder. Oh, and that card you paid for lunch with? It's mine. I'll be reporting it stolen. So this will be your last expensive lunch for a long time. I walked toward the diner exit with my head held high. Every pair of eyes in the place was on me, but I didn't care. I had gone from being a victim to being the one in control. I pushed open the glass door and stepped out onto the street. The sun blinded me for a moment. The fresh air filled my lungs. And for the first time in months, since I signed those papers at the bank without knowing what I was doing, I felt alive. I took out my phone and looked in my contacts. Edward, my lifelong friend. He had been a lawyer before he retired. He would know what to do. I dialed his number with fingers that no longer trembled. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, strong. Eleanor? Edward's voice sounded surprised. I didn't call him very often. What a surprise. How are you? Edward, I need your help. It's urgent. My voice broke slightly. Now that I was away from Matthew, now that the adrenaline was starting to fade, the pain was beginning to seep back in. My son robbed me. He took out a loan in my name for $200,000 without me knowing, and I have a recording of him confessing everything. There was a silence on the other end. Then Edward spoke, his lawyer's voice taking over. Where are you now? Outside a diner downtown. I just confronted him. Eleanor, listen to me carefully. Do not delete that recording. Do not show it to anyone else. Do not talk about this with anyone until we meet. Can you come to my house now? I live in the same place. Yes, I can take a cab. Perfect. Come immediately. We're going to sort this out. What your son did is fraud, forgery, theft. These are serious crimes, but we need to act fast and do it right. He paused. Eleanor, are you sure you want to do this? He's your son. Once we set this in motion, there's no turning back. I thought of Matthew laughing, of Samantha toasting, of their plans to leave me homeless, of how they called me weak, old, an idiot, of how they had destroyed any love I ever felt for them. I'm completely sure, I replied. There's no turning back. He made sure of that. Understood. I'll be waiting. And, Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I know how hard this must be. I hung up and raised my hand to hail a cab. One stopped almost immediately. I gave Edward's address and got into the back seat. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. He probably saw an old woman with red eyes, smeared makeup, but with an expression of iron determination on her face. The ride to Edward's house took 20 minutes. 20 minutes in which I relived every moment in that diner. Every word I had heard. Every lie I had believed for months. Every signature I had put on those bank papers. It all made sense now. The questions from Leah, the bank teller. Her look of pity. She knew. She probably tried to warn me, and I didn't listen. When we arrived at Edward's house, he was already waiting for me at the door. Edward was 72. With completely white hair, but his eyes were still sharp, penetrating, lawyer's eyes. He hugged me as soon as he saw me. Come in, Eleanor. We're going to fix this. His house smelled like coffee and old books. He led me to his study, a room filled with shelves of legal codes and documents. I sat on a worn leather sofa while he made coffee. When he returned with 2 cups, he sat across from me and took out a notepad. Tell me everything from the beginning, he said. Don't skip any details. And I told him. Everything. From the first time Matthew asked me to go to the bank to what had just happened at the diner. Edward took notes, asked questions, his face growing more serious. Edward listened to my whole story without interrupting. He only made occasional notes in his pad, his face growing graver with every detail I told him. When I finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes tiredly. Eleanor, this is serious. Very serious. Your son committed multiple crimes. Fraud, document forgery, embezzlement, possibly even identity theft. But do I have a case? I asked, clinging to my coffee cup with both hands. I signed the papers. He's right about that. My signature is on all the documents. You signed under false pretenses, Edward replied firmly. He told you they were papers to improve your Social Security benefits, not to take out a $200,000 loan. That's called fraud in the inducement. Besides, we have something much better, his recorded confession. He leaned forward. That recording is pure gold, Eleanor. In it, he admits everything. The deceit, the plan, the intentions. A prosecutor would love to have evidence this clear. I felt a small knot of relief in my chest. So, what do we do now? First, we're going to make several copies of that recording. One you keep on your phone, another we upload to the cloud, and I'll keep one on a flash drive. We can't risk losing that evidence." Edward stood up and went to his desk. "Second, first thing tomorrow morning, we go to the bank. We need to report the fraud immediately. The bank has protocols for these cases." "What if they don't believe me?" My voice sounded small, scared. The bravery I had felt in the diner was starting to fade, replaced by fear and uncertainty. "They'll believe you," Edward assured me. "You have the recording. You have your age, which works in your favor because it's easier to prove you were manipulated. And we have the fact that you haven't touched a penny of that money. All the money went directly to Matthew. The pattern is clear. He returned with a flash drive. Give me the recording. I'm going to save it right now." I handed him my phone with trembling hands. Edward connected the drive and transferred the file. While we waited, he asked, "Do you have all the papers you signed at the bank?" Matthew took the copies. He said he needed them for the process. "Of course he did," Edward muttered in disgust. "But the bank has everything on file. Tomorrow we'll request copies of all documents related to that loan. We'll also ask for the bank's security camera footage, if possible. We need to prove Matthew was present on all occasions, that he directed the whole process." "Leah," I said suddenly. "The bank teller. She helped us every time. She must remember. She saw everything." Edward wrote the name down. "Perfect. Leah will be a key witness. If she testifies that your son directed the whole process, that you seemed confused, that he answered all the questions for you, that strengthens the case enormously." He finished copying the file and handed my phone back. "Now, something very important. Does Matthew have a key to your house?" The question caught me off guard. "Yes, he has a copy. Change the locks. Today. Call a locksmith right now." Edward's tone was urgent. "Matthew is desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things. He might try to get into your house to look for documents, your phone, anything he can use to his advantage or destroy." A chill ran down my spine. I had never been afraid of my own son, but now I no longer knew what he was capable of. "Do you really think he would do that? Eleanor, the man stole $200,000 from you, planning to leave you homeless. Yes, I think he's capable of that and more." Edward took out his phone. "I have the number of a reliable locksmith. I'm calling him right now. He'll charge you extra for the emergency service, but it's worth it." While Edward made the call, I sat on that sofa processing everything. My life had completely changed in just a few hours. This morning I had woken up as usual, worried about my sewing, thinking about what to cook, missing my son. Now I was in a lawyer's house, planning how to put that same son in jail. Edward finished the call. "The locksmith can be at your house in 2 hours. I'm going with you. I don't want you to be alone while they change the locks, in case Matthew shows up." He sat down across from me again. "Now, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you prepared for the consequences of this? If we move forward, Matthew will be arrested. He will face criminal charges. He could go to prison for several years. His reputation will be destroyed. He'll probably lose his job. His marriage to Samantha might not survive. Are you ready for that?" I closed my eyes. I saw Matthew's face as a baby, as a child, when he graduated from college. But then I saw his face in that diner, laughing as he planned my destruction. I heard his voice calling me weak, old, an idiot. I remembered how he said he was ashamed of me. And the answer was clear. "I'm ready," I said, opening my eyes. He made his decision when he decided to rob me. I'm making mine now. I'm not going to protect him from the consequences of his actions just because he's my son. That's exactly what he expects. That my mother's love will make me weak. But I'm not weak. Not anymore." Edward nodded in approval. "Good. Then we start tomorrow. We go to the bank at 9 in the morning. After that, we go to the district attorney's office to file a formal complaint. With the evidence we have, the DA will act quickly. They'll likely issue an arrest warrant in a matter of days." "And the money?" I asked. "Is there any way to recover the $200,000? "Partially," Edward replied. "Your son already spent $50,000 on the deposit for the new space. That money is probably lost, although we could try to recover it from the property owner if it's proven he knew about the fraud, but it's complicated. The other $150,000, if it's still in his account, can be frozen by court order. We can also petition to have the loan canceled since it was obtained fraudulently. The bank will fight it at first, but with the evidence we have, they'll eventually have to give in. How long will all this take? Months, maybe a year or more. Legal processes are slow. Edward put a hand on my shoulder. But we are going to win, Eleanor. Of that I have no doubt. The evidence is too clear. Your son condemned himself with his own words. We spent the next hour going over every detail, every document I might have at home, every interaction with Matthew in recent months that could be relevant. Edward took meticulous notes, building the case piece by piece. By the time we finished, he had 4 pages full of information. One more thing, Edward said as he put away his notebook. Matthew is going to try to contact you. He'll call, he'll text, he'll probably come to your house. He'll try to convince you not to go through with this. He'll cry, he'll beg, he'll promise to pay you back. He'll say it was a mistake, that he's sorry. Don't believe a word of it. I won't, I promised, although a part of me, that motherly part that never fully dies, ached at the thought of rejecting my son if he came asking for forgiveness. And don't talk to him without me present, Edward continued. Nothing he says can help you, but he might try to get you to say something that helps him. If he contacts you, don't answer. If he shows up at your house, don't let him in. Call me immediately. Understood. Understood. Edward looked at his watch. The locksmith should be getting to your house soon. Let's go. He stood up and grabbed his car keys. After they change the locks, you'll stay in your house tonight. Lock all the doors and windows. And keep your phone nearby in case you need to call the police. The drive back to my house was silent. Edward drove while I stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of my neighborhood pass by. Everything looked the same as always, but I had changed completely. I was no longer the same Eleanor who had left this morning. When we got to my house, the locksmith was already waiting. He was a young man named Mike, with a toolbox and a professional attitude. "Are you the lady who needs the locks changed?" he asked. "Yes," Edward answered for me. "We need all the locks in the house changed. Front door, back door, any other entrance." Mike inspected the doors. "I have to go get the materials. I'll be back in 30 minutes. He left in his truck, leaving us waiting at the entrance to my house. Edward and I went inside. The house felt different now. Edward and I went inside. The house felt different now, cold, empty, as if the air itself had changed. I looked at the photographs on the hallway wall. Matthew at his graduation, smiling broadly in his cap and gown. Matthew at his wedding, elegant in his suit, with Samantha by his side. Matthew as a child, hugging me with those small arms. All those images now seemed like lies, memories contaminated by what I had discovered today. Do you want me to take them down? I need to process all this. Then I'll decide what to do with them. I sat on the living room sofa, the same sofa where Matthew had sat 6 months ago when he convinced me to go to the bank. Edward, do you think he was always like this, or did something change him? Edward sat next to me, thoughtful. I don't know, Eleanor. Sometimes people only show their true colors when they have the chance. Maybe he always had this capacity for cruelty and just never had a reason to show it. Or maybe the debts, the pressure, the ambition turned him into someone different. He paused. But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what he did and how we're going to handle it now. My phone buzzed in my purse. I took it out and saw the name on the screen. Matthew. My heart sped up. Edward looked at me and shook his head. Don't answer. Let it go to voicemail. I let it ring until it cut off. Seconds later, a text message arrived. Mom, please, I need to talk to you. It was a misunderstanding. Let me explain. I love you. I showed the message to Edward. He snorted in disgust. A misunderstanding. Right, stealing $200,000 is just a little misunderstanding. He took my phone. May I? I nodded. Edward started to type something, but then stopped. No, better not to respond at all. The silence will make him more nervous, and nervous people make mistakes. The phone rang again. Again, Matthew. Again, I let it go to voicemail. Then another message. Mom, I know you're angry. You have every right. But I'm your son. You can't do this. We can fix this as a family. Don't involve strangers. Strangers? I muttered. He calls it involving strangers if I go to the authorities, but he had no problem treating me like a stranger when he was planning to rob me. Another message came, this one more desperate. Please, Mom, if you go to the police, my life is over. I'll lose everything. My job, my reputation, everything. Is that what you want? To destroy your own son? Edward read the message over my shoulder. Typical manipulator. He's trying to make you feel guilty for his actions. He's reversing the roles, making you seem like the bad guy if you report him when he's the one who committed the crime. I know, I said, though every message sent a pang of pain through me. But it still hurts. He's my son, Edward. As much as he betrayed me, he's still my son. I know, Edward said softly, and that's what makes this so hard. But remember, you are not destroying his life. He destroyed his own life with his decisions. You are just protecting yourself and demanding justice. Mike, the locksmith, returned with his materials. He spent the next 2 hours changing the locks on all the doors. While he worked, my phone didn't stop ringing. Calls from Matthew. Messages, each more desperate than the last. Then messages from Samantha started coming too. Eleanor, please, be reasonable. Matthew is devastated. He made a mistake, yes, but we all make mistakes. Don't ruin his life over this. Another from Samantha. Think about your future grandchildren. Do you want them to grow up knowing their grandmother put their father in jail? What kind of family would we be? Edward read that message and let out a bitter laugh. Future grandchildren. She's playing every emotional card she has. How convenient that she mentions grandchildren now, when just a few hours ago she was toasting to leaving you homeless. When Mike finished, he handed me 3 sets of new keys. All set, ma'am. These are the only keys that exist now. The old locks are useless. I paid him $200 in cash. It was money I hadn't planned to spend, but it was necessary. After Mike left, Edward checked the whole house with me. We verified that all the windows locked properly, that the doors were secure. If you hear any noise tonight, call the police first and me second, he instructed. Don't go investigate. Don't open the door, just call. Do you think Matthew is capable of breaking in? The thought terrified me. I don't know. But I'd rather be cautious. Edward gave me a hug before he left. Get some rest, Eleanor. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. I'll pick you up at 8:30 to go to the bank. After Edward left, I was alone in my house for the first time since the confrontation. The silence was deafening. I made myself a chamomile tea with trembling hands and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Matthew had eaten 1,000 times as a child, where we had shared breakfasts, lunches, dinners, where I had helped him with his homework, where we had celebrated his birthdays. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Matthew. Mom, I came to your house, but you changed the locks. Seriously? Are you afraid of me now? It's me, Mom. Your son. The one you raised. You don't trust me anymore? The cynicism of that message made me angry. Did I trust him? He had destroyed all my trust. I wrote a reply for the first time. Do not come to my house again. Do not contact me again. My lawyer will be in touch with you soon. I sent the message and blocked his number. Then I blocked Samantha's too. I didn't want to hear any more pleas, more manipulations, more attempts to make me feel guilty. The night was long and difficult. Every noise made me jump. The wind against the windows sounded like someone trying to get in. The tree branches scraping the roof sounded like footsteps. I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened over and over. I thought about all the moments I had misinterpreted. The time Matthew insisted on helping me organize my financial documents. He was probably looking for information he could use. The time he asked me how much my house was worth. I thought it was innocent curiosity. He was calculating how much he could use as collateral. All those signs I had ignored, because I never imagined my own son could betray me like this. At 3 a.m, I heard the sound of a car parking in front of my house. I got up with a racing heart and looked out my bedroom window. It was Matthew's car. I saw him get out, walk to my door, and ring the doorbell 1, 2, 3 times. Then he pounded on the door with his fist, each blow echoing in the silent night. "Mom, open the door. I need to talk to you." His voice sounded desperate, almost hysterical. "Please, just let me explain." It wasn't like it sounded in the diner. My hand was shaking on my phone, ready to call the police if needed. But Matthew didn't try to force his way in. After 5 minutes of knocking and yelling, he finally gave up. I watched him go back to his car, sit inside for several minutes with his head resting on the steering wheel, and then start the engine and drive away. I couldn't go back to bed after that. I made another tea and sat in the living room, waiting for dawn. I thought about my husband, dead for 5 years. I wondered what he would have done in this situation. Would he have forgiven Matthew? Or would he have done exactly what I was doing? I remembered something my husband had told me once, when Matthew was a teenager and had been caught lying about his grades. "Eleanor," he had said, "if we don't teach him that actions have consequences now, he's going to grow up thinking he can get away with anything." I had wanted to forgive Matthew that time, to let the lie slide. But my husband insisted we punish him. Now I understood he had been right. At 6 in the morning, I finally saw light through the curtains. The sun was rising. I had survived the night. I took a shower, dressed carefully, choosing a gray dress that made me look serious and respectable. I put on a little makeup, covering the dark circles from my sleepless night. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a different woman. Older, yes, but also stronger. Wiser. More determined. At 8:20, Edward knocked on my door. At 8:20, Edward knocked on my door. I opened it to find him standing there with 2 coffees in his hands and a look of determination on his face. "Good morning, Eleanor. Ready for this?" He handed me one of the coffees. I took it gratefully, though my hands were shaking slightly. "Ready," I replied, though I wasn't sure it was true, but it had to be. There was no turning back now. The bank opened at 9. Edward and I arrived 10 minutes early and waited in the parking lot. I drank my coffee in silence, looking at the building where my life had been destroyed without my knowledge. At 9 o'clock sharp, we walked into the bank. Leah was at her desk, helping a customer. When she saw me, her face showed surprise and guilt. Edward approached the bank manager, a man named David, who was in his glass office. "Good morning. We need to speak with you about a case of fraud. It's urgent." David had us come into his office. He was a man in his 50s with an impeccable suit and a serious expression. "Fraud? Please, sit down. What is this about?" Edward took the lead. "I'm Edward Mendez, an attorney. I represent Mrs. Eleanor Torres. About 6 months ago, her son deceived her into signing documents for a $200,000 loan. She believed she was signing papers to improve her Social Security benefits. She never consciously authorized the loan. She never received the money." David listened attentively. "Those are serious allegations. Do you have any proof?" Edward took out his phone. "We have a 16-minute recording where the son admits to the entire fraud. He explains exactly how he deceived his mother, how he planned to use the money, and how he intended to let her house be foreclosed on when she couldn't pay." David listened to a few minutes of the recording, his expression growing increasingly grim. When Edward paused, David took off his glasses. "This is terrible. Mrs. Torres, I am so sorry this happened in our institution. Your employee, Leah, was present for all the transactions," I said, finding my voice. "She must have seen something was wrong." David called Leah into his office. She entered, visibly nervous. "Leah, do you remember Mrs. Torres and her son coming in a few months ago for a $200,000 loan?" Leah nodded slowly. "Yes, I remember them." The lady seemed confused. The son answered all the questions. He filled out most of the forms. I tried to ask her some questions directly, but the son would interrupt. "Why didn't you report your suspicions?" David's voice was firm. "Because technically, everything was in order." She signed. She had her ID. Leah finally looked at me. "Mrs. Torres, I'm sorry. I should have done more." David checked his computer. The loan was approved 6 months ago for $200,000. The funds were deposited into an account in the name of Matthew Torres, not Eleanor Torres. A withdrawal of $50,000 has already been made. The other $150,000 is still there. He looked at Edward. I am freezing that account immediately. I will also begin the process to cancel this loan. And the payments I supposedly owe? I asked. Suspended. You will not have to pay anything while this is being resolved. Edward asked for copies of all the documents. David provided them all, along with a promise of the security footage. We left the bank 2 hours later. I felt exhausted but validated. They had believed me. The $150,000 was frozen. In the car on the way to the district attorney's office, Edward prepared me. The prosecutor is going to ask you a lot of questions. Be honest about everything. The DA's office was a gray building full of people waiting. We were assigned to a prosecutor named Ryan Vargas. He was a man in his mid-30s, with a serious expression. We told him the whole story. Ryan listened to the entire recording without interruption. When it finished, his expression was one of disgust. This is one of the clearest cases of familial fraud I've ever seen. The son literally confesses to everything. What's the next step? Edward asked. I'm issuing an arrest warrant today, Ryan replied. Matthew Torres will be arrested, probably tomorrow or the day after. He will face charges of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. We're talking about several years in prison. The impact of those words hit me. My son was going to be arrested. Edward took my hand. Do you have any regrets, Mrs. Torres? Ryan asked gently. Because if you do, now is the time to say so. I thought of Matthew laughing in that diner, of how he planned to leave me homeless, of how he called me weak and an idiot. I have no regrets, I said in a firm voice. Do what you have to do. That night, I slept for the first time in days. 2 days later, Edward called me early. They arrested him. Matthew is in custody. My son was in jail. The pain was real and deep. But so was the relief, and the certainty that I had done the right thing. Months passed. The trial. The hearings. In the end, Matthew took a plea deal. 5 years in prison. Restitution of the $150,000 that was recovered. Samantha divorced him 3 months after his arrest. I wasn't surprised. I sold my big house. I bought a small, bright apartment downtown, overlooking a park. I started sewing again, for pleasure, not out of necessity. I made new friends in my building. Carol, a 70-year-old widow. Helen, a retiree who organized movie nights. My cousin Sarah came to visit often. I learned to truly live alone. Alone, enjoying my own company. I took painting classes. I started to travel. Small trips to nearby cities. I discovered a world I had ignored for years. Matthew wrote to me from prison. Letters asking for forgiveness. I didn't answer the first 10 letters. But eventually, after 2 years, I wrote him a short letter. I hope you use this time to become a better person. The mother you knew died that day in the diner. If you get out one day and want to meet the woman I've become, maybe we can talk. But it will never be like it was before. He never replied to that letter, and that was okay, because I had moved on. I had learned the most important lesson of my life, that self-love is more important than any other love, that trusting doesn't mean being blind, that kindness doesn't have to mean weakness. Now, sitting on my balcony watching the sunset over the park, drinking my chamomile tea, I can honestly say that I am happy. Not in the way I imagined I would be when I was young, but happy in a deeper, more authentic way, happy with myself, living for myself, and that, finally, is enough.